The brutal Chicago wind howled outside the floor-to-ceiling windows of my daughter's penthouse that night. But inside, the air felt thick and suffocating. Julieta was smiling at me across the dinner table, but it was a smile that looked more like a carefully painted mask. Beside her, Mark was showing too many teeth as he poured more expensive red wine. I had known my only daughter for 34 years, and I knew when she was hiding something dark. I had spent decades reading people in corporate boardrooms and building a medical empire from the ground up after my husband passed away 15 years ago. I knew a predator when I saw one, even if that person shared my own DNA. Julieta kept glancing at Mark, and there was an unnatural enthusiasm in their voices that immediately set off my internal alarms. I sat there, sipping my water and watching them play their roles in this strange and unsettling theater. "Mom, we've noticed you've been so forgetful lately," Julieta began, pushing a small salad leaf around her plate without taking a single bite. "Last week, you said you were going to the bank to handle some business, but Mark found you just sitting on a bench in the park for 3 hours. That was a blatant lie. I had been in the park, yes, but I was meeting with my lead accountant to discuss the strategic expansion of my vast real estate holdings. My daughter had no idea that my little afternoon walks were actually highly confidential business meetings. She thought I was just a frail old woman losing her grip on reality. And the stove, Valeria," Mark chimed in, using my first name with a newfound and deeply disrespectful familiarity that made my skin crawl. Julieta said she found the gas running when she stopped by. "You could have leveled the whole block." My heart raced, but I kept my face calm. I hadn't even used the stove that day because I'd had a lovely lunch at the club with my friends. They were building a case against me, brick by lying brick. Every single point on their mental list was a calculated fabrication designed to make me appear incompetent. At 72, I knew the world often saw a woman with silver hair as someone who had already begun to fade into the background. They didn't see the powerhouse I still was. They didn't know about Silver Oaks, the premier assisted living facility in the Chicago suburbs. I owned the entire place through a complex web of shell companies to keep it private. It was a secret project. I started to ensure that the elderly were treated with the dignity they deserved, not discarded like pieces of old furniture. And now, ironically, my own daughter was suggesting I move into the very facility I had personally designed. "We found a truly wonderful place for you to live," Julieta said, pulling a glossy brochure from her designer handbag. "Silver Oaks, it's top-rated and very exclusive. You'll have your own luxury suite and 25-hour professional care." I almost laughed out loud at the sheer irony of it all. "Surdiction," Mark whispered, a word that felt like a cold death sentence. They were planning to declare me legally incapacitated to seize my entire fortune. They weren't just asking me to move. They were trying to erase my autonomy and take control of everything I had worked for. I told them I needed 3 days to think about their proposal. I didn't actually need 3 days for a decision. I needed 3 days to set a trap that they would never see coming. I spent that night recanting my entire life in my mind, proving to myself that my memory was still as sharp as a professional razor blade. I recited old account numbers, the names of every nurse I'd ever hired at Silver Oaks, and the exact date I'd last seen Julieta tell a lie as a small child. She had already stolen $300,000 from my accounts over the last 6 months. She thought her authorized user status was a license to loot my savings. But greed always makes people sloppy. She didn't realize that I noticed every single missing cent from my bank statements. Friday arrived like a dark storm over Lake Michigan. Julieta and Mark appeared at my front door with a young, nervous-looking man in a white coat named Dr. Pineda. He was clearly out of his depth, likely a friend of Mark's from law school who desperately needed a quick payout. He asked me basic questions like, "What day is it?" and "Who is the president?" I answered every single one correctly, but he just shook his head and glanced at Julieta. Signs of early onset dementia, he scribbled on his clipboard with a fake look of concern. Compatible with a significant risk to herself. They didn't even wait for me to sign any papers. Julieta produced a temporary court order claiming I was in immediate danger to my own safety. Within 2 hours, I was in the back of their expensive black SUV, watching my beautiful home disappear in the rearview mirror as we drove toward the suburbs. Julieta was on her phone the entire time, her voice hushed but clearly excited. I caught small snippets of her conversation. How long until we get the power of attorney? What about the main bank account? They were already dividing the spoils of my life before I was even through the gates of the facility. Silver Oaks looked exactly as I had designed it. Warm wood floors, thriving green plants, and the faint, pleasant scent of fresh lavender. Patricia, the director I've personally hired years ago, was standing at the front desk. Her eyes widened for a split second when she saw me being wheeled in like a common patient, but she caught my subtle nod of warning. She played her part perfectly. "Welcome, Mrs. Valeria Miller. We have your luxury suite ready on the 3rd floor, room 204. Julieta didn't even bother to look at the room. She was too busy calculating the value of my assets. Julieta gave me a mechanical, cold hug and promised to visit me sometime next week. "It's for the best, Mom," she whispered, her tone dripping with fake relief. The door clicked shut, and I was finally alone in the room where I had personally chosen the wallpaper. I sat on the bed and waited patiently. 10 minutes later, Patricia entered and locked the door behind her. "What happened?" she asked, her professional facade replaced by horror. I told her everything, every lie, every forged document. And the millions Julieta had already spent on a new SUV and a kitchen remodel in my own house. "Give me 2 weeks," I told Patricia. "Treat me like a normal resident here. I want to see exactly how deep this betrayal goes." I knew Silver Oaks had something Julieta didn't. 24-hour audio and video surveillance in every room, installed years ago after a minor theft incident. The recordings were archived for 90 days on a highly secure server that only I had the master key for. Julieta thought she had hidden me away where I couldn't interfere. She didn't realize she had placed me at the very center of my own intelligence network. My first week as a resident was a true revelation. I met other people who were there under the same tragic circumstances, discarded by their own families for money. I met Mrs. Lords, 78, whose son had sold her house in another state and then vanished. There was also Mr. Albert, 81, who had been declared incompetent by a greedy niece who only wanted his pension. They were victims of a silent epidemic, families using a broken system to discard the elderly and loot their lives. My anger shifted from my own situation to a burning desire for justice for all of the people around me. I realized that I had the resources and the power to fight back, not just for myself, but for them as well. Guida's first visit was the following Tuesday afternoon. She arrived with a pathetic bouquet of cheap supermarket flowers, and the $2 price tag was still visible on the plastic. She spent exactly 13 minutes and 40 seconds with me, her eyes constantly scanning the clock on the wall as if she couldn't wait to leave. She talked about the weather and the food in a loud, theatrical voice for the benefit of the staff watching us. She wanted the documentation to show that she was a devoted and caring daughter. What she didn't know was that the camera hidden above us was capturing her true, cold expression the moment she thought I wasn't looking. After she left, Patricia showed me the high-definition footage from the facility's crowded parking lot. Julieta wasn't driving her old sedan anymore. She was in a brand new $120,000 black SUV paid for with my money. My residential security cameras at home showed even worse things. My antique furniture being loaded onto a truck, my mother's fine china being tossed into boxes, and a team of contractors tearing apart my kitchen for $1 million modernization. She was erasing my life while I was still breathing. In the third week, Julieta brought Mark and a thick set of legal papers to my room. "Mom, the accountant suggested it would be more practical if I had full power of attorney over your affairs," she said, squeezing my hand with cold fingers. If I signed those papers, she could sell all my properties, close my successful businesses, and leave me with absolutely nothing. I told her I needed to think about it, watching her mask slip. I saw the predator beneath her face for a brief moment. "Don't take too long," she warned me. The house expenses are really piling up. Those were expenses that she had created herself. I didn't sign the papers. Instead, I spent the next 24 hours orchestrating the final end of her game. I called my personal attorney, a detective from the Financial Crimes Unit, and my accountant. "I need everyone here tomorrow morning," I said. I told them to bring the original title deeds for Silver Oaks. The next morning, Julieta, Mark, and their bot doctor walked into the facility's boardroom, fully confident they were about to receive my total surrender. When they saw my legal team and a detective in plainclothes waiting for them, their confidence wavered. "Who are these people?" Julieta demanded. "My friends," I replied calmly, sitting at the head of the long table. "I have some important questions first," I began. "How much of my money have you spent in the last month?" She blinked several times, trying to stay calm. "Just basic expenses, Mom. The house needed some urgent repairs." I threw a detailed bank statement on the table. $4.5 million. "Explain the new car. Explain the $300,000 tickets to Tulum." The entire room went ice cold as she stared at the paper. Mark tried to intervene, claiming Julieta deserved a break from the extreme stress of caring for me. Caring for me? I stood up, my voice full of power. "You visit me for 15 minutes a week. You've looted my home and tried to bury me alive in this place." Mark started talking about my cognitive limitations, but I cut him off. "Dr. Panetta, let's do a real test. Right now. In front of witnesses. Unless you want to admit fraud." Panetta was cornered and had no way out. With trembling hands, he performed the mini mental state exam on me. I scored a perfect 30 out of 30. He tried the clock test and I drew a perfect timepiece without hesitation. I named 42 different animals in 60 seconds. He was pale as he closed his briefcase. "Mrs. Miller's cognitive function is well above average for her age," he whispered, avoiding Julieta's gaze. I produced the proof of the $200,000 transfer from Julieta's account to his bank account 2 days before my commitment. "The only thing different about my condition was the bribe you received," I said firmly. Julieta was hysterical now, her mask completely shattered. "You're too stubborn to see you can't live alone. Someone had to take charge of your life." I looked at her with a calm that was like cold glass. "Based on what? I just proved I'm perfectly capable." "You didn't do this for my safety. You did it for your massive debts. You owe nearly $3 million in credit cards and bad investments, and you saw me as an obstacle to your inheritance." The silence in the room was absolute and heavy. Even Mark looked away, finally realizing that their ship was sinking. "I don't want you to die, Mom," Julieta screamed, tears streaming down. "But you don't need all of that money. You're here. Everything is paid for. What difference does it make? I need it now." It was the final admission. I had become a nuisance to her simply because I was still alive. "There's one more thing you should know, Julieta," I said, signaling to Patricia. She handed me a thick folder. "I am the legal owner of this entire facility. I have been for 15 years. You committed me to my own home." Julieta's jaw literally dropped in shock. "What? Silver Oaks is yours?" I nodded slowly. "I have every word you've said in this facility recorded on high-quality video and audio for the last 4 weeks. Every plan to sell my house, every laugh about keeping me under control, and every conversation with your friends about spending my money." I handed a tablet to Detective Anna, showing a compilation of Julieta and Mark's darkest moments. Detective Anna looked at the footage for 5 minutes before standing up with authority. Julieta Miller and Mark Spencer, you are under arrest for financial fraud, perjury, and elder abuse. The handcuffs clicked shut. Julieta's scream of, "Mom, how could you do this?" echoed through the hallway. I didn't answer her. For her, love meant unrestricted access to my life. For me, it was time for her to face the consequences of her choices. Mark was led away as a co-conspirator, his legal career over before it truly began. As the boardroom emptied, I sat in silence with Patricia. I had sent my only daughter to prison. I had exposed her as a criminal and destroyed any chance of a normal relationship. But I had also saved myself and reclaimed my freedom, my dignity, and my right to live on my own terms. "Are you okay?" Patricia asked. "I will be," I replied firmly. I felt a strange mix of profound grief for the daughter I'd lost and an exhilarating sense of liberation. The arrest became national news in Chicago. Daughter imprisons wealthy mother in her own nursing home to steal inheritance. I refused all interviews, but I let my lawyer issue a formal statement. Valeria Miller is sharing her story to shine a light on the silent epidemic of financial abuse against the elderly in our country. I realized that my wealth gave me a platform, and I intended to use it to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. In the months that followed, I launched 23 simultaneous lawsuits on behalf of the residents of Silver Oaks who were there involuntarily. We won 11 cases in the first hearing alone. Families who had looted accounts were forced to return the funds, and all the fraudulent interdictions were reversed. Mrs. Lords chose to stay at Silver Oaks. "I like it here," she said. "But now it's my choice, not my prison. I have the monthly fees and eliminated the profit motive, turning the facility into a model for ethical care." Julieta was sentenced to 5 years in prison and Mark to 3. When the judge read the sentence, Julieta finally looked at me. There was no remorse in her eyes, only pure, unadulterated, and deep hatred. She still believed I was the villain for not letting her rob me, but the biggest surprise was my grandchildren, Leo and Sarah. Juliet had kept them away from me for years, using them as bargaining chips. Now, with both parents in prison, they needed a guardian. There was resistance, my age, my health, the trauma of the case, but I proved my worth. Leo and Sarah arrived in Silver Oaks on a rainy April day, bewildered. "You put my mom in jail," Leo said on the very first day. "Your mom put herself in jail," I replied gently. I just didn't let her finish what she had started. It took months of incredible patience, but children are resilient. They saw me caring for the other residents, playing chess with Mr. Albert, and they began to see the truth. I transformed a wing of the 3rd floor into a space for them computers for homework, books, and a piano. Sarah discovered a deep love for music, and Leo started learning chess from Mr. Albert. The facility, once a place of forced solitude, became a vibrant community. I worked with legislators to pass the Valeria Act, requiring independent medical evaluations before any involuntary commitment. In June 2025, the law passed unanimously in Illinois. Today, I am 73. My hair is white, my walk is slower, but my purpose is renewed. I still live in room 204, but now it's entirely by choice. I like being accessible to the residents and seeing my grandchildren every single day. My life isn't what I imagined it would be, but it is deeply meaningful. I learned that age doesn't make you fragile. Experience makes you powerful beyond measure. My name is Valeria Miller, and after everything that has happened, I am finally truly home in the place I built. The Valeria Act began to ripple across other states, sparking similar movements in California and New York. I found myself testifying before committees, no longer a hidden owner, but a public advocate for the vulnerable. My network of medical clinics, which I had once considered my greatest achievement, now seemed like a mere prelude to this work. My grandchildren watched my speeches on the news, their faces full of pride. Leo became my shadow during school breaks, learning the ins and outs of facility management. He had a natural empathy that his mother had somehow lost along the way. Sarah played her piano in the lobby every afternoon, the music drifting through the halls and bringing smiles to the faces of people who had once felt forgotten. We were a family again, but a different kind, one built on the ruins of a dark and painful conspiracy. I received letters from Julieta occasionally. They were filled with accusations at first, then pleas for money, and finally, a hollow kind of silence. I didn't visit her. Some betrayals are too deep for a simple apology to mend. I made sure her children could write to her, but I kept them protected from her manipulation. I was teaching them that love has boundaries and that respect is the foundation of any real relationship. On the anniversary of my commitment, we held a gala at Silver Oaks. We celebrated the residents who had reclaimed their lives and the staff who had stood by them. Patricia and I stood on the balcony, looking out at the Chicago skyline. "We did it, Rosario," she whispered, using the name I had kept secret for so long. "We changed the system." I squeezed her hand, feeling a profound sense of peace. I was no longer afraid. My tremor was still there, but it didn't bother me anymore. It was just a reminder of the life I had lived and the battles I had won. I realized that the most valuable thing I owned wasn't the facility or the bank accounts. It was the respect of my grandchildren and the gratitude of the people I had helped. I was a queen in my own empire, but an empire of compassion and justice, not just bricks and mortar. The investigators who worked on my case still dropped by for coffee. They told me that the Pineda scandal had led to a massive crackdown on fraudulent medical certifications across the city. The young doctor had lost his license and was serving time for his part in the scheme. It was a victory for truth, a reminder that the truth always finds its way to the light. Eventually, if someone is brave enough to hold the torch, I started writing my memoirs, not about the medical clinics, but about the lessons I learned in room 204. I wanted people to know that their story isn't over just because they reach a certain age. I wanted them to know that they have a voice and that their experience is a treasure, not a burden. The book became a bestseller, and I spent my weekends traveling to give talks at community centers and universities. Sarah and Leo often came with me, helping me with my presentations and meeting people from all walks of life. They were growing up with a global perspective and a deep sense of social responsibility. I knew they would carry on my legacy, not just of wealth, but of integrity. I was no longer just Valeria, the businesswoman. I was Valeria, the advocate, the grandmother, the survivor. I was finally living my best and truest life. The facility continued to thrive, becoming a model for similar institutions across the country. We hosted delegations from Europe and Asia, all eager to learn how we had created such a vibrant and respectful community. I felt a sense of fulfillment that I hadn't felt in years. My husband would have been proud of what I had achieved. He always knew I was a force of nature, and I was finally proving him right. Every morning, I would walk through the gardens I had designed, breathing in the scent of the flowers and listening to the birds. It was a simple joy, but one that I cherished more than any luxury. I was no longer a prisoner of my own life. I was the architect of my own destiny. I had taken the worst thing that could happen to a mother and turned it into the best thing that could happen to a community. I was a victor. Julieta was eventually released on parole, but she moved to another state to start over. I made sure she had a modest trust fund, enough to live on, but not enough to hurt anyone with. We didn't reconcile, but I found a way to let go of the anger. It was a quiet ending to a loud and painful chapter. I was focused on the future, on the grandchildren who were my joy, and the residents who were my family. I was home. Matthew? No, I am alone, but I am not lonely. I have my work, my family, and my dignity. I have learned that the only person who can truly define you is yourself. I am Valeria Miller, a woman who built an empire, survived a betrayal, and found her purpose in the most unexpected place. I am 73 years old, and I have never felt more alive or more powerful. The future is bright. The Valeria Act is now a federal law protecting seniors across the entire country. It is my greatest legacy, a shield for the invisible and a voice for the silenced. I often receive letters from people I've never met, thanking me for saving their parents or for helping them find their own strength. It's a humbling and beautiful experience. I realized that my pain was the fuel for a revolution of compassion. Sarah is now a professional pianist, often performing at benefit concerts for senior advocacy groups. Leo is a lawyer, specializing in elder law and fighting the same battles I once fought alone. They are my pride and joy, the living proof that out of darkness can come incredible light. We still spend our holidays at Silver Oaks, surrounded by friends and laughter. It is a real home in every sense of the word. Patricia is still the director, and we are closer than ever. We often sit on the balcony and talk about the early days, when we were just two women with a dream and a secret. We've seen so much change, and we've been a part of it. I'm grateful for her friendship and her unwavering support. I couldn't have done it without her. We are a team, and we are making a difference every single day. I am blessed. My tremor is still there, a gentle reminder of the passing time, but it doesn't define me. I am defined by my actions, my choices, and the impact I've had on the world. I'm no longer Valeria the hidden owner. I'm Valeria the champion. I found my true self in the service of others, and it's a beautiful place to be. I am 74 now, and I'm just getting started. There is still so much work to do. The gardens at Silver Oaks are in full bloom today, a riot of color and scent. I walk through them every morning, feeling a deep connection to the earth and the cycle of life. It's a peaceful and grounding experience. I'm grateful for every breath, every moment, and every lesson I've learned along the way. I'm a woman who has lived a full and meaningful life, and I'm looking forward to whatever comes next. My grandchildren often ask me if I'm still sad about their mother. I tell them that sadness is a part of life, but it doesn't have to be the whole story. I've learned to forgive, not because she deserves it, but because I deserve peace. I've found joy in them, in my work, and in the community we've built. I'm a happy woman, and that's the greatest victory of all. I'm finally, truly free. The broken packages box still sits in my living room, a reminder of the night I realized my own strength. It's a symbol of resilience and the power of the human spirit. I've learned that we are all broken in some way, but it's the cracks that let the light in. I'm a masterpiece in progress, and I'm proud of every scar and every wrinkle. They are the marks of a life well lived and a battle well won. I am 80 now, and my hair is as white as the Chicago snow, but my eyes are still sharp, and my mind is still clear. I'm still the queen of my empire, but an empire of love and legacy. I'm surrounded by my grandchildren, my friends, and the people I've helped. I'm a woman who has left her mark on the world, and I'm content. My name is Valeria Miller, and I've finally come home to myself. To anyone who feels like they've been discarded or silenced, it's never too late to take back your life. You have a voice, you have power, and you have a purpose. Stand tall, speak your truth, and never let anyone tell you that your story is over. You are a masterpiece in progress, and the world needs your light. I am Valeria, and I am finally, truly free. Goodbye for now, and stay strong.